Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our next segment of Uplevel Your Consciousness and Navigating Your Future. And I am Gloria Coppola, and I have been divinely guided to bring our guest presenters to all of you this month and to teach you from their place of wisdom and inspiration. And tonight, all the way around the other side of the world from New Zealand, is a very special presenter that I'm going to bring on. And I never actually met him personally, except for on these videos in the past and connected, and we have some commonality in our trainings. So I thought he would be a great one to bring on. So it is my divine pleasure to bring on Kahu Graeme Kapono. And if you guys heard me the other day, I don't introduce with titles, I introduce with feeling. And so here's what I felt when I was tuning into Kahu. Kahu is the gentle warrior and wise one, creating harmony through the frequency he extends to the world. And the dogs are all agreeing. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to you, and I'm going to go in the background and listen and learn from you as well. Thank you so much.
Aloha, everyone. As Gloria said, my name is Graeme Kapono Urlich. Kahu is also a name, but it's also in Hawaiian tradition a title. Huna is an ancient esoteric knowledge from Polynesia, and some of the legends say that it was brought to this place from the Pleiades, and there are connections with the Pleiades in right across Polynesia, Matariki or Makahiki in Hawaiian. Matariki is the Maori name in New Zealand. This particular version of it, we use Huna as a name for it in a modern context, but it never really had a name. In the ancient days, it was referred to as Kaike Huna or Na'au Huna, which is esoteric knowledge or esoteric wisdom. And in the Maori, we have Kura Huna, which means important knowledge. I teach it from the Kahili family tradition. There are lots of different family traditions in Hawaii, and they're not all the same. They have some common aspects to them, but they're often quite different. So there's no one Hawaiian tradition as such. But I teach in a modern form, as I've learned it, for the modern world, coming from the Kahili family tradition of Kauai. The shaman tradition, kupua, is a Hawaiian word that is a very, very similar meaning to the original Russian Tungusic word shaman, which basically means, in essence, knowing or wise. And it refers to a specific kind of active healer. It's used very, very widely these days for many different purposes, but this tradition is very close in terms of the ideas of the original use of the word in the Tungusic traditions. It uses a very different language than what a lot of people are used to today, because being a shaman, we're very practical and pragmatic people. So we tend to be very simple. We try to take away as much superstition as we can and make things as practically simple as we can. So we use probably some words in a different way to what most people would be more familiar with. Now, Huna as a word literally can be translated as the secret. It can mean the unseen or something that is hard to see, but it literally translates as the secret, and the kahuna, the master of a specific set of knowledge, is the keeper of the secret. Gloria described me as a warrior of sorts in her introduction, but kupua is actually an adventurer tradition. So we have a very, very different viewpoint in terms of healing in particular. For me, healing is simply manifesting a beneficial change. We have no judgment or concept of fixing something that's wrong. In fact, we don't think of anything as wrong per se. We think of it more in terms of it is what it is. How can we change it in a beneficial way? If a person or a situation wants it to be changed. So splitting the words up, the language has a code in it, and splitting the words up, who is a word that we use to mean refer to male energy. Now, English has a deficiency in that we don't have separate words for the state of energy. It's not talking about different energies. It's talking about the state of the energy is in. So who energy is more active and projective energy. And na is the word for female energy, which is energy in a more passive receptive state. And using the first principle that I will get to in a moment, we see that life is the constant interaction of male and female energy directed by thought to create experience. Which brings us to the first principle, Ike. And the translations are translations of 7 proverbs that my teacher was given in his training. So that they're not direct translations of the words, but they encompass more the principle, the proverbs behind the principles. So Ike means the world is what you think it is. Now this means that we create our own reality. We create it through our thoughts, through our beliefs, expectations, our attitudes, our desires, our fears, our judgments, interpretations, feelings, intentions, and consistent or persistent thoughts. And when we change any of those, we can learn to consciously choose and begin to change our experience in life. And so there are many different frameworks of belief that we find operating around us. And we all use several without really being consciously aware of it. So the training in shaman training or in consciously creating life is just becoming aware of what we're thinking. And awareness is one of the meanings of the word Ike. And consciously choosing where we, what the thoughts that we predominantly think. And this system, the first thing we acknowledge is this Huna is a completely made-up philosophy. It's a completely made-up system of thought based on experience of life and observation of how life works. But it also realizes that all systems of thought are made up, quite arbitrary. And a shaman learns to move between them depending on what the purpose is in the present moment, to choose the one that's most effective, that will create the experience and the result that we're looking for. And for a shaman, that is always a healing purpose, a healing intent to increase happiness. Most people experience it in typically, say, a parent who is in parent mode at home, but then an experience that a lot of people are familiar with is they go home to visit their parents and they suddenly become the child again. So they're shifting a framework of behavior. And we learn to become very aware of that and to see that in other people and to help guide them to make the changes, become aware and choose the changes that they want. The second principle that we work with predominantly is color. There are no limits. And this has a couple of basic meanings that we work with. That means that we are unlimited. We are infinite beings, and everything is possible if we can figure out how. It also means that we are connected to everything. There's no separation between us or anything else in life. Some people think, they end at the skin. But in this understanding, our energy is infinite and it's everywhere and it's connected to everything and everyone else. And we say that separation is a useful illusion, because there are things that we can experience from that viewpoint that we can't really experience well from anywhere else, which is basically why we're here, to experience things, choosing to experience things that we can't experience anywhere else. And the overriding nature of the universe is growth, and the nature of growth is change. So everything is connected to everything else. And there are no limits. But we make choices to step into frameworks. And at the moment, we're operating in the framework of an earth reality in a physical body. And that has certain rules, which we have accepted. And it's just like playing chess. It has certain pieces. It has a set parameter in which it operates on the board with 64 squares. And there's nothing in the world to stop us picking up a piece and throwing it across the room and jumping up and down. Nothing in the world to stop us doing that. But if we did that, we're no longer playing chess. So we become aware of the context that we're existing in, and being aware of the rules that apply to that environment, and use them to the best of our ability. So the third principle then is Makia, energy flows where attention goes. Basically, this means that we get, from a manifesting perspective, we get the results of the thoughts and feelings that we predominantly dwell on. And if we want to change something in our life, we need to shift our focus. And if we want something to change in our lives, we have to change something in our lives. And we do that by developing the skill of focus, and focusing on what we want and not on what we don't want. And there seems to be people perceive a conflict in that. We're in a really bad situation, and we want to get out of it. So what do? We take a positive attitude to it. We don't try and say that it's a good situation. We don't try and sugarcoat it and gloss over it and say, oh, we'll try and find some good in this situation. No, being positive about it means taking a positive attitude to being able to change it in some meaningful way for the good, even if it's just a little bit to begin with. Because when we start to make little changes and focus on celebrating those little changes, they really start to build momentum, because our focus is not on trying to escape what we don't like. It's on moving towards what we do want. So energy flows where attention goes. The opposite of that is that attention will also go where energy flows. So if somebody over the way is jumping up and down and getting angry about something, our attention's going to go there. Unless we develop that skill of focus and reminding ourselves, well, that's their reality, that's their right to create that for themselves. As a shaman, I'll ask myself, is there a way that I can help to resolve that situation? But if not, I need to come back here and focus on where I'm moving towards in my life and who I am. And the more we can do that, the more we can be strong in our knowledge of who we are and where we want to go, the less anything outside of us will influence to hold us back from that. And the more people and situations and resources we will become aware of that will help us move forward in that direction. So energy flows where attention goes. The fourth principle that we work with primarily is manawa. And manawa means now is the moment of power. Now really in shaman thinking is all that exists. Everywhere and every when exists in the present moment, in this present point in space. And there's no past or present tense in Hawaiian language, which gives you a real clue as to how they think. If we're having a problem with something that happened in the past, right now, it's our present moment relationship with the memory of what happened And if we change that relationship, then that event no longer affects us. But we do that now. We can't get burned by yesterday's sun, and we can't get wet from tomorrow's rain. And there's another saying that we work with is we can only change from where we are, not from where we wish we were. So we develop awareness of where we are, what we're thinking, and start to work on ways of changing that. The fifth principle then is aloha. To love is to be happy with. Now, a deeper translation of the word aloha is the joyful sharing of life energy in the present. So Hawaiians had this wonderful understanding that love is joyful. And to the degree that we're happy with someone or something, including ourselves, then love is there. To the degree that we are unhappy with someone or something, love is absent from that. And we also say that love increases as judgment decreases. So we work to learn to, as shaman particularly, not judge the state that someone is in or a situation is in. We simply observe, be aware, and somehow know something to do that will improve that situation. And that's done completely without any sort of judgment as to how or why or what. And a little bit of explanation that might make that possible for people is the word for evil. The only word for evil in Hawaiian is ino. And that means to do deliberate harm. So we see evil then as a behavior. And at the essence of everything is love. But someone who has that essence of love, everything has that essence of love in this way of thinking, but they may have learned some what we call ineffective behaviors. And they have, through whatever need they have to feel powerful or to feel loved even, they will hurt and cause harm to achieve that feeling. So looking at it in terms of behavior, it's something that can be changed. And so that's why we focus on it that particular way. So we don't see anyone or anything as inherently evil, but someone could have developed evil behaviors that cause deliberate harm to other people. The sixth principle we work with is mana. All power comes from within. Now, some people mix mana up with energy, but energy is a part of it. Mana is the power that everyone and everything has to be who they are and do what they do. And we call it divine power because for everyone and everything physical, it comes through from the same source, effectively. But we recognize that it's the power to do and achieve things. It's not the power over anything. Some people want to feel effective and powerful by controlling something or others. But usually that control can only come through the fear of the people they're controlling. And it's a temporary control thing. It's not real power. As soon as somebody stops fearing another person, all of that disappears and evaporates. But it's more our ability to influence our lives and our environment and in the ethics of Huna, because we are the environment. If we hurt someone or something, we're hurting ourselves. If we heal someone or something, we're healing ourselves, and vice versa. So there's a built-in ethics in this way of thinking. The seventh principle that we work with is pono. Effectiveness is the measure of truth. So we see that there is no absolute truth. My truth is what works for me to give me the life and experience that I want. Your truth is what works for you to give you the experience and life that you want, or to achieve the things that you want. And they could be quite different. So in this way of working, if I'm helping somebody, I'll be looking to see what they're believing and what they're wanting to achieve, and maybe help them create the beliefs that will support that and create the focus that will move them towards their goal. There's no judgment from Kupua tradition in terms of what someone should be doing, or that they're doing something wrong, or any of that kind of thing. So if something in life is not working, we go back to the beginning. We become aware of what we're thinking and how we're behaving. We acknowledge that we're free to change that. We change that by shifting our focus. We do it now. We do it with love. We build our inner power, our mana, to make that change more effective. And we keep cycling through as we learn more, figure out what's working and what's not working, and build on what is working more and more. Life starts to build a momentum in that direction. And the overriding understanding with the Aloha is that the purpose is to increase happiness, increase joyfulness. And with mana, building mana, developing skills, building confidence, increases our ability to choose and keep our focus. Now, we have a concept of 3 selves. We don't use the word ego a lot. Originally, that is a Latin word simply meaning self, so it means all of us. But it tends to be used, people tend to mix up ego and egotism. One is a noun, it's a word that just means self. The other is a behavior. But people mix those words up or misuse them. So we use the concept of 3 selves in Huna, and these are not separate parts. They are more different functions, and the definitions are used for understanding. And this is kind of important with the technique to understand a little bit about this. Lono is our conscious mind, and that's the part of us that's responsible for making decisions. It's the part of us that has imagination and can create things new for us or for the world. So Lono is like the captain of the ship, setting the course, giving the instructions to the crew. And Ku, the subconscious mind or the body mind, is like the crew and the ship. If Lono is giving clear, concise instructions to Ku, then the sails get set in the right way and the ship goes in the right direction and they end up where they want to go. And so Ku is the part of us that has memory. It's a part of us that is responsible for, well, basically memory. It's the part of us that has the patterns like being able to walk, being able to speak, being able to access language and those kinds of things. And memory of how we've reacted in situations and to various ideas and thoughts and behaviors of others. You know, these are all learned behaviors. Everything we do in life is a learned behavior that can be changed. And Aumakua is the higher self, what we call the higher self. It is like the wind in the sails for the ship. And we get inspiration from Aumakua, but Aumakua doesn't do it for us. When we get the inspiration, Lono has to decide, yes, that's a good direction to go, and we'll make a choice to change the beliefs, change the behaviors that will help us move in that direction. A lot of people expect stuff to be done for them, but it doesn't really work that way. One of my first teachers in Hawaiian tradition was Abraham Kauai, who I learned. Well, he was using Lomi Lomi, which is a bodywork system, to teach navigation. And almost the first thing he said to me is he held up an imaginary spear pointing downwards, and he said, the head of the spear is here. And another example that he gave is when he was training, one of his teachers told him, you know, look into this pool and you will see your destiny. And he was sitting there looking at the pool, looking at the rocks and things in the bottom and stuff. And, where's my... And then he realized that he was looking at his own reflection. So we are our own destiny. It's Lona's place to choose and to act, and then our Makua brings in all of the connections and inspiration that's necessary to move forward. So we have a formula for success in Huna in the way we teach it, and that is E equals MC squared minus R. You might recognize part of that formula. But it's effectiveness equals motivation times concentration times confidence minus resistance. And the resistance comes from what we call FUDS. F-U-D-S, fears, unhappiness, doubts, and stress. And in this knowledge, we know there's, at some point or other, there's always going to be something unknown happening. We can't know what we don't know until we know it. So we have a lot of techniques that we use to deal with the anxiety and the fear when it comes. So we don't expect to ever, well, it's possible, but we don't ever expect to get to, in any given life, to a place where there's no uncertainty, where there's nothing to fear, where there's no doubt. But we do have tools to get back to a place, into the present moment, where we can have most access to the tools we have, where we have the most confidence, and we are the most relaxed and the most focused, which is the present moment. Which brings us to the 1-inch belief that I would like to share. Now this came from a martial arts technique that my friend Serge Kihili King, he noticed, he was watching this Bruce Lee, who had this technique that he developed, where he would focus all of his physical and mental energy into a 1-inch movement with his hand as a punch. And he could knock people over with that. He was a little guy, not very heavy, but he could break boards and knock people across the room almost with it. And so Serge tried this out one day, and he thought, he had this inspiration, what if I put all of my attention into a single belief for a period of time? And what he found out was this was a deeply relaxing and deeply empowering process. And what he worked out was that if you could come up with an affirmation, a short phrase that was about something that you believed in all certainty. Now, most people use affirmations to try and change a situation or change a behavior. And because beliefs and behavior have momentum, they're habits that need to be replaced. There's generally resistance to that, because Kahu will say, well, hey, what about this belief? What about this belief? But when we focus all of our attention into a statement that is affirming something that we know absolutely is true, there is no resistance to that. And Kahu and physical, we relax deeply physically. And the effect of that is to bring us into the present moment and to open up that channel of inspiration from our Makua, and that level of awareness that we can have of our behaviors, of our physical tensions, and consciously do something about it and do with it. So the statement that I came up with for me that works is that the sun is hot. There's no doubt in my mind about that. If I stand in the sun, I get hot. I know from physics at school that the temperature on the surface of the sun is 6,000 degrees Celsius. That's the example that I came up. Some people say the sky is blue. But what we do is we'll come up with a simple statement. It needs to be about 5 words or less. Something that's absolutely concise, that we can focus all of our attention on just for 1 minute. Even 1 minute has a profoundly relaxing effect. And when we work with it for a while, I will do this probably 5 or 6 times a day. I'll sit down and do this for a minute. And what I find is that any tension that's built up through what I'm doing during the day will fade. And so, because what happens with most people is that they'll get tense and then they'll stop doing what they're doing, but they don't do anything to relax. So then they come back and add another layer of tension and another layer of tension. And we never get to a place where we're ever taking time to relax the tension that we're experiencing. So this technique, some people think it's very, very simple and they forget to do it. And the thing about techniques is they only work if you do them. And they only work if you do them enough to develop the habit of getting the response to it. So this is a very, very simple, and there's an article that I wrote that has a wider explanation of how to use it to create change. But basically it's this process of when we get anxious, when we get fearful, when we get out of balance, maybe angry, if we can do this for a minute or two, and that's all it takes. We don't need to go down and do 20-minute here or take an hour out of our day. And I might do this if I'm dealing with something that's particularly challenging. I will maybe do this once an hour to keep myself in a balanced place where my thought processes are clear and I'm achieving what I want to achieve. So that's one very, very simple technique that you can do anywhere, anytime. And the more you do it, the more the effect builds up, the more the expectation of this releasing of tension develops. And so the more effective it becomes as we do it more and more. So hopefully that gives some good grounding on where this knowledge comes from and its focus on practical responses to what's happening in the world and with ourselves in relationship to the world. Because the most important relationship that we have is the one that we have with ourselves. And that is the essence and focus of the way I teach and the way I work. So aloha, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Mahalo. Thank you for your wisdom, for sharing the 1-inch belief and helping people shift their focus and like you said, being aware of what we're aware of. I think those simple techniques will help everybody out there. And thank you for taking the time to share your wisdom.
You're welcome. Mahalo.
So we're going to say good night or good afternoon. Good night for us. He's got daytime hours to Kahu. And I want to just let you all know that if you have, in fact, registered for the recordings, you will also have links to the different presenters, including Kahu, to learn more about him, the work that he does, and again, a description of this 1-inch belief on his website. So be sure to go down to the link that I post and make sure that you're registered to receive all that. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We will be back again in a couple of days with more wonderful presenters. So keep an eye on the page so that you don't miss any of these very inspirational people sharing their tools and tips to help you raise your consciousness. Goodbye, everybody.